Shalom, party people, and welcome to the 12th seat in the dark, rocking a rucksack, finally back in the saddle again. JD Stone on my right. Sound off, Mr. JD Stone.
Good morning.
Yeah. So we're on a shorter ruck for various reasons that don't matter at this point. But so prior to rolling the camera, we were talking about how there's a few Bond villains in our world right now with Mr. Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab's, and I'm sure there's plenty more, but here's the question that we weren't entertaining yet. Who's James Bond in this reality?
Bond is a fiction.
Well, I know Bond is a fiction.
No,
so are the Bond villains, but...
I mean, they're not.
Well, we've just proven that these Bond villains are not fiction, so Bond must not be fiction either.
Well, here's the deal. We're peasants.
Yes.
And Bond is a spy. We're not supposed to know about Bond.
Well, see, I actually really like the fan theory that James Bond is a distraction for the real spies who are doing the real work, because he always runs into real spies while he's on the trail or whatever.
Yeah.
Downrange, whatever you want to call it. And
I'm sure there's a spy term for that.
yeah.
I know that you come out of the cold, so...
Yeah, maybe.
In the cold?
I don't know, he's going into the fray.
Yeah.
Anyway, and like he keeps introducing himself to everyone. The name's Bond. James Bond.
I'm
a spy. I work for MI6. I shoot people for a living, and I'm fast and loose with the rules. They keep telling me not to do things, and I do them anyway. Pretty much. And like he always...
I bet you want to sleep with me now.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I don't, but you know, like that's how the world works apparently. And so you have like the ideal situation for him to just be the distraction while the other spies in the background are doing the real work, because he always meets other spies that are embedded already into a system that's existing. So like, why does he even need to go? Is he just the guy who seals the deal? Is he the closer? I don't know. So
I actually haven't read any Bond, and I've not watched a lot of it.
So you totally, it's a short story, but you totally need to read Casino Royale.
Okay.
That one, in my opinion, is the Bond that is super, super worth it.
Okay.
Like it's nothing like the film.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Okay.
It's a really, really well done short story, I think.
Was that original Ian Fleming?
Yes.
Okay.
Ian Fleming did the vast majority of them. I think he just had an editor finish them after he died. But
yeah, well, I'm aware that there was another popular author that I've met. His name is Jeffrey Deaver. He was one of the ones that was selected to do another Bond.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I mean, they're still producing Bond novels. It's just a brand now.
Yeah.
That they tap different various thriller authors to do.
That makes sense. Well, Robert Lundum passed, and like his ghostwriter or somebody like really close to him that was very familiar with the work for the Jason Bourne series continued it, and actually did a really good job keeping it going. Like kept it in a similar enough style that like it paid homage to Lundum's original work, but it was different enough that you knew it wasn't him.
Yeah.
But like it was still very true to the Jason Bourne character. So that was good. I mean, you have Tolkien, who his son, or was it his grandson?
Christopher Tolkien was his son.
It was his son? Okay, yeah. His son like picked up the work and did fine with it.
I mean, well, Christopher Tolkien was...
He was really more of an editor.
Yeah, he was practically... He was very, very involved in the production of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings as well. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, he was basically a co-creator of Middle-earth the entire time.
So I saw a meme that just warmed my heart. It was J.R.R. Tolkien explaining in depth as to how his languages evolved and changed over the thousands of years of Middle-earth history.
Right.
And you have C.S. Lewis who inserts Santa Claus into a story with centaurs and and he's like, I can do what I want.
Yeah. Yes.
And I was just like, okay, yeah, that tracks.
It was two very different philosophies on world building.
Right. It's the I'm going to explain every meticulous detail that no one could even think to possibly ask about. Yeah. Versus, you know what? I think this would go really good right here, right now.
Well,
my people just keep rolling 20s. Versus
there was intent behind Lewis's ideas. He really liked the idea of pre-Copernican astronomy. Mm-hmm. So he was using that to guide a lot of his themes of world building, and he based the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe around around Jupiter.
Makes sense, I guess.
And the pre-Copernican idea of Jupiter, and so there was where a lot of the Roman mythology, like satyrs and centaurs and all of that, came from, and that was supposed to be a one-off.
Yeah.
And so that's why there's also Santa Claus in there. That's Jove.
Yeah.
It's a Santa Claus type figure, and so all of those were references, and then it just kind of took off from there. But I will say that Tolkien dryly commented to Lewis, if that had been a real satyr that encountered Lucy in the woods, it would have been a very short and brutal story.
Oh, of course it would have been a very short and brutal story. He had to Disneyfy it before Disney was even, like, a thing.
Yeah.
But, and I know Walt Disney was around, but I'm just saying, like, before Disney was what Disney is. But anyway,
Well, no. I'm going to call you on that one. They Disneyfied Snow White from the get-go.
I get it, but while we're talking Tolkien and Disney and Snow White, one thing that I thought was super cool of Tolkien is he reversed the Snow White story with his creation of the dwarfs or whatever. And it was Snow White that woke up his 7 dwarfs when their sleep was over. Because the moon in Elvish literally translated to Snow White. And it was the moon shining on his dwarfs that had been put to sleep is what woke them. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
I did not know that.
Yeah, because the dwarfs were not supposed to be created in his world. They were a creation of, was it Melkor? Or
no,
somebody.
It was not Melkor. It was...
it's been a hot second since I've been in the Silmarillion.
It was one of the Valar.
Yeah.
It was not Aule, I don't think. It was the Valar that was responsible for earth and minerals and stuff like that. And so
gotcha.
It is a kind of a funny story, though, because he seems like the Melkor that went right.
Gotcha.
He did have ambitions. He was excited to build things like Melkor was, and he was impatient and built something of his own.
Gotcha.
But it turned out that he did not have the power to animate them the way that he wanted. He could not make individuals. He couldn't make people. He could only make automatons that would behave and act exactly the way he wanted them to, as he was thinking about them.
Gotcha.
And then if he couldn't think about them, then they just wouldn't move. And when he was discovered, because he was trying to work on this, Iluvatar called him on it, and he said, you weren't supposed to do this, and he repented. Mm-hmm. And so Iluvatar said, okay, this is what I'll do for you, since you love them so much. Mm-hmm. I will finish the work and I will animate them for you. But they were not supposed to exist.
Right.
That is actually the Elvish version of dwarves. So the Silmarillion is an Elvish history.
Right.
And if you read it, with a critical eye, you can see how Tolkien wrote this as an elf would write history, not necessarily as history happened.
Right.
And this is kind of like a commentary on the way that nations and cultures write history. You know, they always
the
put
winners who
themselves
write
in
history, and then they put their own spin on it.
right, and they always cast themselves as the heroes, and we were the liberators, and we did all the right things. The Silmarillion is actually really racist against dwarves.
Oh, of course it is.
And when you can read between the lines and see that, like they'll say that, you know, dwarves are this, that, the other thing, but then it's like, but the elves, they took their caverns and stuff like that, and it's like, okay, then in another event, there's just this diplomatic fiasco, and the dwarves were at fault. It says the dwarves were at fault, but if you kind of just look at the way the events folded out, it was 6 of one and half a dozen of the other.
That tracks.
So, I don't know where I was going with that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh no, I recall. This idea that dwarves were not supposed to exist, but they kind of do anyway. You know, that's that reads now like elves trying to contend with the existence of this people that is very different from them.
Yeah.
And frankly, can compete and maybe even surpass them in some ways. And they don't like that. So they've got to come up with a weird origin story. Kind of like how the Mormons came up with a weird origin story for the existence of black people.
Oh, yeah, but they recanted that story, so it's no longer part of their mythology.
Oh, that's very kind of them.
Yeah.
I guess you can do that when you don't have a confirmed prophecy.
No, when you have a living prophet in your church that can make up whatever they want, that's what it
It's
is.
a pretty cool hack for your religion.
Yeah, it is. But that's what a lot of those groups will do, is that they will, hey, it's the newer stuff that informs how we interpret the older stuff. Which, at least they're being intellectually honest. Because there's a lot of people who say that they're going to let the older stuff interpret the newer stuff. And then they just do what they want. It's like,
Right.
because there's people that I fundamentally disagree with, that at least they're intellectually honest about how they're doing things. And it's like, well, this is what it says. And it's like, okay, cool, that's fine. Morning. How are you, sir?
Good.
We encounter people now, summer,
Yeah.
late summer. When we were doing this, when it was cold,
Yeah. For some reason, the streets were empty. I can't imagine why.
a buddy of mine at a different area of life told me, as I was describing what we're doing, he's, you know, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
He's an active service member.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right,
We're not doing this because we have to.
Yeah.
So, that being said, we're not in the business of doing things because we have to. We're in the business of doing hard things. So, on that note, go do hard things.